Diane, I'm listening to a podcast, Black Lodge Trivia Night. I've never heard so many game aspirations in my life.
All right, welcome back to Black Lodge Trivia Night. I'm Art, and we are here doing another Bookhouse Boys, obviously down to Matt and Patrick. And I didn't do the required reading and the homework I needed to do to keep going with Hostel, and I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to record and blah, blah, blah. So what I wanted to do is continue taking a look at some of the games in the Black Lodge Trivia Night archives. And I wanted to take a look at Coriolis because this, The Great Dark, just arrived from its Kickstarter fulfillment. And it made me realize that it's been a little while since I've taken a look at, thought about, etc. Coriolis. The Third Horizon, which was the original game from, I don't know, like 2017, 2018. I feel like it's been longer than I would imagine or realize. So let's start with the one that came out first from Free League, which is The Third Horizon. So let's set this one aside for now. And let's take a look. So Coriolis, if you don't know, is a sci-fi game, sort of an epic space opera kind of game that is very much, it says right in it, it's like Tales of the Arabian Nights meets, grand opera sci-fi. And the basic background of the game, well, first of all, I just want to say, Free League produces the shit out of their RPGs. The artwork in this is amazing. It's, everything you expect from a Free League game, production-wise, is there. So, not that I'm a huge fan of just like, hey, I'm going to film me thumbing through the book, but I wanted to show you. So, like, here's the basic setting. There's like 36 or so star systems in the settings. And you've got, different sectors of space. You've got the Dabaran Circle, et cetera, et cetera. So, this is the basic setting. Kua, which is in the middle, and I'm probably going to butcher half these names. That's the sort of central point of interest to the whole set, and you can sort of tell, just from the setup of the setting, just how central it is. And then you can see like the basic table of contents. You get like standard stuff, introduction, character skills. Explains making your character. Some of the main systems in the game, combat, spaceships, and star travel. Third Horizon. Okay, so you sort of get like a little bit of everything. What I was hoping to get from this one, the Third Horizon, and I went in a little bit sort of sight unseen, but what I was hoping to get was basically like a Traveler-like game that maybe is a little smoother. Traveler is good, and I'm playing Hostel, which is based on a Traveler system. I really like 2300 AD, which is also a Traveler system. But the pieces within the Traveler rule set can be, crunchy, so you might not need space combat every single time. And when you do, it's robust. But, so it kind of helps in that sense that, make sure you know the pieces that you need to know for the session, but because what's there can be kind of robust. The rules, I want to say, are mostly your typical Mutant Year Zero sort of D6 system, but there are some differences, which we'll get into in a minute. But just, the Coriolis in a nutshell is like, it's inspired by Middle Eastern culture rather than the Western one. Here's somewhere in here's, it's very Middle Eastern inspired. It's the theme is the conflict between the first coming, the Zenithians, who are the second, third comings, whatever. Just different like mysticism and icon worship. Praying to the icons you can see. Religion in that sort of mystic sense is a big part of this setting. And that's some of the differences in mechanics that we'll get to in a little bit. Brief overview of the background. Zenith and Nader, many hundreds of years ago, two colossal colonization vessels left Earth. Their names are Zenith and Nader. I will say, I get that both are words with Arabic origins. I don't know if I don't know if and I know that they have like celestial meanings. But I also know that, like if you watch Master and Commander, like, the idea, like, ship captain, ship personnel, they can be superstitious. They can be things like that. You've got here a game where mysticism is a big part of the setting. So, if you got assigned to the Nader, I think you'd be like, oh, shit. So, and lo and behold, the Nader loses contact and nobody knows where it goes. So, I don't know. I get what they're doing with, like, the two spaceships with related names, but that was one thing I was like, okay. And then they head off for the star. I had it jotted down here on my phone, so I'm sorry. I'm going to be looking around all over the place. Aldebaran? Baron? I don't know how you say that. Aldebaran is how I've always said it. And obviously, again, it's a star with a Arabic, its name sort of has Arabic origins. It's a track that slaps on Enya's first self-titled album, but actually, I don't know if it slaps. I do know I do know it's like one of the first songs on that album, and I may own it. I think I own it. Anyway, so that's the basic idea. So there's the Zenith and the Nader. They're two generational ships that are sent from, I guess, Earth, hundreds of years. Nader loses contact. Nobody knows where it goes. That's one of the mysteries. Zenith arrives to its destination and finds that it's already populated. And the reason why is because while they were traveling, these portals are discovered that allow for, much faster interstellar travel. And so the Zenith gets beaten to the punch. And that's sort of the idea of, like, the first arrivals, the second arrivals, the third arrivals. The people that arrive first are the ones who take the jump gate. They said get everything settled, and they, actually start building up and getting things up and running. The Zenith shows up, the Zenithians, as it was called a moment ago. They're like, what the hell? Conflict ensues. The people on board the Zenith, they start converting the generational ship actually into a massive space station, which is called Coriolis, which is, of course, the Coriolis in the title. Some people, like, there's a mutiny on the Coriolis or Zenith as this is happening. One side goes down to the Kua planetary surface. Others stay on the station. Again, a lot of factions, a lot of, things like that to facilitate conflict. One of sort of the weird, it's very human-centric, which for me in terms of sci-fi, you get a picture here of Coriolis, I think. It's very human-centric, which for me in terms of sci-fi is pretty good, but they do introduce things like, who built the portals, and there is the emissaries, which are these beings that sort of enter the fray. They come from, the depths of a gas giant, so they just show up and they say, hey, we want to be part of this, what's going on? So you can see sort of the basics of creating your group concepts. Pick your spaceships, it's a big part of this, which I like. Again, I was looking for something in that Traveler vein, and I think in that realm this delivers. And it says, like, you can be free traders, mercenaries, explorers. Again, these are all very, you can see parallels to Traveler. Agents, pilgrims, the spaceship, what I like, your characters start off with debt, which I think also is something that can happen in Traveler. There's no life path system, but I like the idea that there's already this force pulling on you as soon as you're out in the world. Player characters, again, it's typical stuff: background, choose a concept, reputation score, name, appearance, blah, blah, blah. Again, this is not that different than a lot of Mutant Year Zero systems. So if you've played, you get a patron, nemesis, that's nice. So if you've played them before, you're sort of getting an idea of, like, you get points to spend on your attributes, points to spend on skills. Again, it's very typical. Like I said, it's a D6 system where you form dice pools. You roll, the number of D6s you get determines your success. D6s. The number of 6s you get determines your success. 1s, of course, are going to count as penalties if you push your rolls. All that's very, normal stuff. Sorry, I've got my notes here. Skills and challenge, change your artists. So then you get your classes: artists, data spiders, like fugitive, preacher, pilot, negotiator, some, classic roles, scientist. Now, if you don't have a lot of players, I don't know how you would manage a number of these classes. Like, because you're going to need a pilot, you're going to need a mechanic. But if you have a bigger party, maybe, or who knows, maybe it all works out in the end. I just want to say, like, this isn't like a Quinn's Quest review. Like, I haven't done a full campaign, but seeing Great Dark made me go through this again and made me realize, yeah, this is something I've always wanted to run. So we're going to get into now one of the first differences here. So when you want to push a roll, you can see, like, 6s mean success. Levels of... This might be a little different. 1 6 is enough for your actions to succeed, but it means you just made it barely. If you roll 3 or more 6s, you achieve what's called a critical success. Now, I feel like I don't know the threshold for like a critical success in other Meet Near Zero systems. I do know that just getting more than 1 6 is often enough to start helping you out. But here you can see, like, they do make a point to note that 3 seems to be more of a magic number. I'm just going to reach for a mouse here because there's something I'm checking to make sure everything's going smoothly, and I can't because something popped up. Okay. But here's one of the first mechanical differences. When you want to push a roll, you have to pray to the icons. Now, the icons, obviously are sort of like the mystical religious god presence. There's, 9, 12, something of them. And what you need to do is you need to pray to the icons, and what that does is it allows you to push your roll. I think when this game came out, there was a little bit of like, oh, why is there so much religion? That's my memory of it. Maybe that's not true, but I remember, like, this kind of stuff was stuff that I don't think went over well with everybody, and my thought in that is reinforced because of the fact that it's all yanked from the Great Dark. So maybe that's the case. So I don't care. I don't mind it. Like, if it creates this, it is grounded in, again, it's Arabic. It's sort of Islamic and I guess in vibes, you could say. But I didn't care either way about that. What I thought was interesting about it was it did 2 things. It created there's 2 things. It created a possibility for a system they introduced called dark points, which I'll get into in a minute. And it also, I guess you could have done that anyway, but it also allows you, because it's prayer, is you can do it ahead of time. So, like, if you sort of prep beforehand by, praying and doing stuff like that, you can get bonuses. And I kind of liked that touch. If you had a +1 modifier to rerolls when you pray to that same icon anytime later. So you can, hold on one sec. Yeah, okay. So you can sort of say, like, okay, I'm going to choose an icon. This icon is like dexterity, infiltration. You can sort of see, like, they have specialties. So if you ahead of time say, you know what, I'm going to pray to the gambler because I'm the pilot, you can sort of set yourself up to, give yourself a bonus for the adventure. And it says if you go to a chapel for that particular icon, it ups the effect of that. So again, I thought this was all kind of cool. But when you do that, they have here something called the Dark Between the Stars. So in the setting, it's kind of what I like about it is that there's obviously the Dark Between the Stars. You could just say it's just the absence of starlight. In this game, nobody's quite sure what composes that Dark Between the Stars, and it's more of a mystical presence in Coriolis that has effects. It can generate, like, creatures, like, it does all sorts of stuff. But one of the things it does is when you pray to the icons or when you're traveling in the Dark Between the Stars and stuff like that, the GM gets something called dark points. Now, dark points are basically like a currency the GM can spend to introduce complications for the players. And it says you can re-roll stuff for GM controlled characters. You can take the initiative. You can break turn order. You can make a PC's gun run out of ammo. If they've just, like, say, reloaded, you can make a misfire. You can do all, these things. It's sort of like, a lot of games have this, but in my experience, it's similar to, like, the Benny system in Savage Worlds, where, when the players spend a Benny, it goes to the GM, and then they can spend it to do things, and, so on and so forth. So I kind of like this. It's a little more crunchy. Creates like a little potential ebb and flow between the players and the GM, which, it says here, like, darkness points without prayers. You acquire it at portal jumps during travel in the dark between the stars when the players are using mystical powers. So when sort of the mystical aspects of the setting come into play, these darkness points accrue and go to the GM to spend against the players. You know what I mean? So I kind of like that. Otherwise, again, it's, typical stuff, explains everything, talents, again, if you've done Mutant Year Zero engine kind of games, it's all pretty typical stuff in terms of character creation. So then you get to combat, which is one of the other places I noticed that there were some differences. I don't know of any other... Now, I haven't played Twilight 2000. I haven't even really read the rules yet. Maybe this is the one where it would come into play, but I don't know. The combat in this game has action points. I've mentioned I'm a big fan of Mithras. Mithras, one of the things I really liked about it when I first encountered it was the action point economy. A lot of the Mutant Year Zero engine games that I've played sort of have like a fast action and a slow action. The one I played the most is Forbidden Lands, and I don't know. I think that's how it is in Forbidden Lands. So this has sort of like an action point economy. I don't know if it actually changes much in practice, but it does sort of give you a little more control over what you do within a turn, right? It creates a little more nuance, which I think is nice. If it's not too much overhead, that's always the balance, right? Like in introducing overhead without introducing too much clumsiness to the system. So they do... A lot of the games use cards. Here they definitely use dice to roll for initiative. I don't know if this game had... a lot of when you get the Kickstarters, you get like unique dice. And, like my alien dice, it's basically like, the 6 and the 1 are marked and everything else might as well just be blank. In this game, you sort of need the number. So I don't know if there are custom dice for this game. But I'd be curious to see that because, again, they would need the numbers. This one is the one that, the regular D6 is closest to what you need for the mechanics. Because sometimes the numbers matter. Like initiative and for stuff, I think, in space combat specifically. But yeah, so combat's all basically the same. I will say that ranged combat feels a little more tactical. Again, it's a little crunchier. It's and I haven't played Twilight 2000, and I don't remember a lot of the details from the time I played Mutant Year Zero proper, like the actual game. But you have like options like Overwatch Fire and stuff like that. So it's got some more examples, more things you can do during your turn. And again, I don't know if that's new to Mutant Year Zero engine games here, but it is something that I haven't seen a lot. And maybe it's like, Art, that's in Forbidden Lands that you played 60 plus sessions of. I don't recall that, but maybe it is true. But, and it's got, again, hunger, thirsty. It's all the same. It's going to do... I will say this, I keep blowing past everything. I really like... When I was saying, like, Free League knows how to produce the shit out of a book, this is another example where, like, I find the artwork stunning. Very evocative, even if it's not... I don't know. It's fine. Like, the style, I was going to say, like... like when they came out with Bethesda Starfield, they mentioned like NASA punk, and I kind of like the idea that they were trying to go for there. So this is much more stylized and obviously, Arabian Nights inspired, but the artwork is genuinely inspired. You know what I mean? I genuinely enjoy the artwork. So again, really nice job. So I'm not trying to blow past the artwork. I don't know if there's like a printer-friendly version of this. I know a lot of people get annoyed when Free League does black background pages if they print out their own copies from the PDF. So I don't know if that's just a subtle way to get you to buy the book. It's like, hey man, we're going to make you blow all your black ink. Or maybe you could say it's like slightly, I think Dune, you could say, has slightly Arabian influences in its visual style. So, I could see that being comparable. But again, it's got everything you need. Planetside landing. Oh, did we already get spaceships? I genuinely, again, because like I said a couple times, I'm looking for, why is the shit keep popping up and I can't see? There we go. Okay. I was looking for something that maybe was, in the vein of Traveler, maybe a little smoother. And this doesn't disappoint. Like, the way they explain faster than light travels through portal jumps. Portals tend to be these sort of ancient things. Get this mouse out of the way. Ancient things that are sort of found there by the people that showed up. Takua built Coriolis. The portals tend to be these jumping points that are very close to the sun. How they work is unknown. Where they come from is kind of unknown. But anyway, the spaceship is detailed in a good way. The spaceship construction, I should say. It's, again, something that's not in Great Dark. We'll get into that in a minute. The spaceships are detailed. It's a lot of things you could say are similar to like a Traveler kind of spaceship construction, just a little toned down. Modules, costs, you can shape the hull, different features you can add in, med labs, escape pods, weapons. It's all here. Everything you'd want for constructing like a pretty robust, detailed spaceship is all here. They give you basic types like a gunship, a freighter, so I feel like they're covering the basics that you would want in a really good way. Other ships, so again, then they have space combat. Now space combat, it does sort of, Traveler does this as well. At least the second edition, where you have like crew positions, captain, engineer, pilot, sensor operator, gunner. So you can see that the game is trying to introduce some level of detail to the combat. They're not just going to hand wave it and make it like M-Space's internal system, I think, was a little like hand wavy, which I think works. But if you're looking for a little more, this game, I think, has that where something like M-Space might not. And of course, like Hostile or anything that's going to be Traveler based absolutely does. So, so the combat, everybody in the roles has different phases. There's like the engineer phase, the order phase, it's all this kind of different stuff. It's very pilot phase, attack. It's all very, I found it in reading to be pretty smooth, still detailed. Again, something I like very much. They give you an example of space combat, so on and so forth. This section, the Third Horizon, gives you a lot of detail on the factions. Again, there's no point in breaking all this down. I don't know. So when I was setting up like Hostile, one of the things that they did, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the first, but like when they break down, say like the corporations in Hostile, each one has a little paragraph that's sort of like an adventure hook. Now here, I didn't quite get that so expressly, but I think there's some things you can pull from the details if you're looking for that. Obviously, freelance agency. Some random tables here. Again, it's. I'm not going to go through because what's the point? The people. Some more background. This one I thought was actually kind of a good section here. Daily life in the Horizon. One of the things that I struggle with is a large setting in a science fiction, a large location in a science fiction setting, right? So I would personally, as a DM, be intimidated to run a lot of stuff in Horizon because I'm like, I don't know what the details are. I need, as a DM, what helps me is having a few details to sort of latch onto so that I can ground my efforts to come up with ideas to flesh out the setting. I need like some anchors personally, and maybe that's just my own creative failing, but it really helps me to have a few anchors to glob onto and then sort of build out from there. And that's one of the reasons why I like Harn so much. I know I did a Bookhouse Boys on that. Harn, I feel like, gives you could argue maybe too much detail, but I was able to find detail. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's not too much. It's just when I needed a detail to glob onto, I found it. And I found this to be a bit of a helpful section, just to give me, like, because what is the character like when they wake up in the morning and they're about to get the message to go to the space bar to get the mission? What is that like? What does it feel like to get down there? Like, just having a little bit to get me started, given that this is sort of like a hardish sci-fi kind of setting, but it does have that sort of Arabian, Middle Eastern presence to it. So I need to shift how I might describe things away from the typical traveler, more in a different line with, like, bazaars and things like that, whatever it ends up being. But anyway, I found this to be kind of a helpful section to give you, there's 9 icons, to get me started a little bit in thinking. And one of the starter adventures offered in the back of the book takes place on Coriolis. And so to me, that's also a great way to help me understand, like, hey, this is what it's supposed to be like. This is how it's supposed to feel. They give you an adventure, and then you sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, I get the basics idea. The 9 icons, it's the celestial beings that you pray to, determines the calendar, blah, blah, blah. More background if you want to use it. Church of the Icons, so again, religion is a big part of this setting. They give you a whole section on Coriolis itself. They go into Coriolis more than they go into basically anything else, really. And that threw me a little bit, because it makes sense, because it's like central to humanity in this section of space. But well, again, I wish there was more for what's out there in the rest of the setting to take a little bit of the heavy lifting off, like the further you get away from the core Kua system in Coriolis. Kua system is where Coriolis is. It gives you a good breakdown of all the planets. It's the most populated. They give you a bit of an atlas to the rest, with some highlights of planets. Like here they'll say, like, important locations. Most of these places don't have anything, right? So they'll give you bits on the important locations. I wish, and maybe I'm just missing it, or maybe this is in other books, I wish they gave you some more, even if it's just random tables, I wish they gave you more tools to help flesh out these star systems without important locations, in case you want to spend time there. Just like, one of the things that's interesting about Hostel is, like, it has, like, these random tables to quickly generate a planetary installation, or a quick space station, or a quick hauler, and you use if you haven't watched any of the playthroughs of that, it's a system where you basically have dots and you connect the dots with lines. It's very simple. And there's random tables for each of those dots that you then connect with lines as you sort of create the layout of wherever it is you're going. And I'm not saying they needed literally that, but just like a few tables to help me sort of like, okay, we're going to Marfic, and Marfic doesn't have anything of interest, but there's probably still people there. What's something? There's no random encounter table, I don't believe. So you can sort of see that's sort of what I'm getting at, right? There's tools that a lot of games typically give you to help fill in the gaps that Coriolis does not. And maybe some GMs are like, yeah, no, that's for the best. But I even feel like, Alien has these kinds of things to help bridge the gap. Now, to be fair, like, when you travel, like, faster than light, it actually doesn't take that long in this game, where, like, in Alien, you've got a lot of time to fill on the journey. This game, once you get to the portal, the jump through the portal is like a day. So it's not so much about the journey in that sense, but I do wish there was something like that to help flesh out, if you're just traveling in a system, just to make things a little easier on the GM. I'm going to skip Gonna skip like the bestiary. They tell you sort of how to play a game. Space is full of mysteries. Supernatural is real. They're giving you some basic ideas. So in a typical sense, like, it'll say things like, infuse the game world with inspiration from the Middle East and the mysterious fairy tale ambience of the Arabian Nights. Now, it doesn't really, through some of the description, maybe it helps you get there. But I think that's where also like the random tables could help do that for you if you're not, that's a lot of heavy lifting potentially to ask for the GM. Just be like, hey, just infuse it with Arabian Nights, and you're like, okay. Especially like, because again, like the game goes out of its way to say like, this isn't inspired by Western cultures, it's more Middle Eastern cultures. Obviously, as a boring Western culture white guy, I might not have command of the Middle Eastern stuff that would help to really flesh out the experience. So anyway, space full of supernatural is real, whatever. Like some of this, it's very broad. So here it says like, let the PCs explore the secrets of the Third Horizon during their travels. Let them find Porter Builder ruins, hear rumors. Again, random tables could have helped fill that in a little bit to get me an idea of like, yeah, okay, right. Like obviously, the GM section of we'll get to it. How to build a scene, I guess that's, basic stuff, but it's very broad and it's very basic. And so in some ways it's not very helpful because it doesn't have some of the supporting material I wished it had. I keep mentioning random tables. But it also helps in that it's got pretty three in the dark between the stars in the game. So it sort of talks about like what's going on, like how people view the dark between the stars and what it actually does. And then it gives you a couple of starting adventures. I don't know if it's 2 starting adventures and then 1 starting location, or if it's 3 starting adventures. I think the 3rd one and then a 4th is the starting location. Basically, they give you a couple of starting adventures and then they give you like the bar in Coriolis as like a fleshed out. So even though the GM stuff is a little broad, I feel like by providing you at least the starting adventures, Wahib is the cantina that they flesh out for you. That helps in that sense. So the GM advice isn't just like a broad bleh, So all in all, like, and I think I have, man, I'm going to forget the stuff. Like, I only have the physical rule books. It's not like the other ones where I whip out all the rule books and we go through the stack. I've only got the physical rule books for this game. But I think I have on PDF some of the adventures. There's a campaign that comes with it. And I feel like if I were to run this, I would choose to use the pre-printed campaign. And I would do that because for all the things I'm saying, like I'm not quite sure exactly what this setting is, because it's a little different than my lived experience and my typical science fiction consumption. So I would happily rely on the campaign to get things started and go from there and be, I think it's supposed to be pretty decent. I don't genuinely know. I haven't read it, but I'd be happy to do that because I feel like, yeah, they've given you a tool, they've got this campaign, and then hopefully that would help me sort of get the idea like, oh, yeah. Okay, I see what these factions are doing. Okay, I see how this is supposed to look and feel and smell and stuff like that. So anyway, I really like this. And now let's get to the other one. The other one, of course, is the newly released Coriolis the Great Dark. It is a standalone game. You do not need the Third Horizon to play the Great Dark. Again, I thought I had heard that this was a little bit of a response to the reception of the Great Dark. I don't know if that's true. But let's get into it. Again, you've got the setting. The idea here is that it's hundreds of years after the Third Horizon. It involves, like, here's Kua right there. So you can sort of see this is much bigger. And so what this involves is a group of people that took off from Third Horizon. They think that they had a signal from the Nadir, that generation ship that was lost that I was talking about, the Zenith and the Nadir. They chase after that signal. When they get there, the signal disappears, and they realize they're kind of stuck in this section of space, and they're like, shit, can't really get back. There's no portals here. The portal that we were hoping to find to take us somewhere is dead. So we're kind of stuck. But then what they discover is something called the slipstream, and the slipstream, this doesn't really have a... The slipstream ends up being this sort of force that helps you move much faster between stars. So, you know, they call it the Great Dark. They call the horizon out there, and that was the Third Horizon. I think this one's called the Lost Horizon, because they're like, well, shit, we're doomed. And then it turns out maybe they're not quite so doomed as they think. You know, they give you, again, some basic stuff. One of the things, and I think this was mentioned in the Third Horizon, one of the things I like is that, you know, obviously I like the idea of space trucking. And part of what drew me to Coriolis was the idea of space trucking, but with intrigue and mystery, exploration. Like, those concepts are in, you know, Traveler. They're in, I would say that maybe 2300 AD, the sort of sub setting to the Traveler rule set is a little more exploration focused, in my mind. But I find it tough to run, the exploration side. So I was kind of curious to see how these games would help you get into that. In that sense of mystery and that sort of the mysticism behind the Great Dark. Like, I enjoyed all of that, to be introduced to the space trucking without it just being science fiction horror. You know. So yeah, you get the I don't know if they. So yeah, like the city, it's the same sort of thing where, you know, they call it the Lost Horizon. The generation ship gets where they're going. They realize, oh shit, we're stuck, and so they sort of do what they did with Coriolis, and they take the generation ship and they start turning it into a base, but they do it on an asteroid. So it's not like Kua, the planet is right there where people can inhabit. This is just, you're in an asteroid in a system. Good luck. So they create this ship city, and they call it the Dying City because, you know, they just expect to be stuck here and fall apart. They got factions. But yeah, once they discover the slipstream, that helps get them to other areas, and they realize, oh, like, this is going to allow us to go to places that maybe we're not so reliant on the portals. And so space, as you can see from here, space ends up becoming much bigger. You have the builders who built the portal, so you start sort of exploring that mystery of who they were and who built all this stuff. But now we're going to get into what this game is. Oh, there's birds. We'll get into that in a minute. You see, though, no mention of icons. Icons are gone. Birds are in. This game is much more focused. Your character in this game fills a very specific role. You work for the Explorers Guild, and you go on exploring missions. That's basically it. It cuts out a lot of different things. So you can sort of see, you know, you create your characters, but trying to find somewhere there's like assembling your crew. So the crew role, like before it was like pilot, engineer, sensors. Here it is delver, scout, burrower, guard, archaeologist. So you can see none of that's about space, right? That's all about being on the surface. So this game, you can already tell, is deviating from that space grand opera vibe of the Third Horizon. So the mechanics in this get a little bit more in line with a typical Mutant Year Zero. Again, 6s are successes, 1s are failures. You know, the 1-6 gets you success. Any 6 beyond that starts to get you bonuses. There's no more action points in combat. There's no icon, so you can't pray to the icon beforehand. You just push your roll. The bird, they describe it here, the crew is not whole without its bird, sometimes called a Garuda. your guardian spirit, and Blight Finder. Blight is a sort of a disease force that's out there as you do your explorations that sort of builds up like this sort of doom clock on you. It's a literal sickness that, you know, chips away at a stat, your heart stat. And and then when you hit 0, it's sort of like losing hope in the One Ring. But there's also hope. So there's 2 stats that are a little different, hope and heart. Hope is the stat that this game uses for like when you push a roll and fail, say like in Forbidden Lands, like you push a strength roll, fail, your strength gets injured. Here, hope gets injured, and if your hope gets depleted, you break in a way. I'll say this, I actually kind of like that idea, because one of the few frustrating things about Forbidden Lands, I genuinely enjoyed my time with it, is that when you push a roll for like a strength check and you fail, you then have to explain like why your strength is lower. And sometimes it's just like, dude, like I was just trying to sneak across an alley. Like my strength wouldn't be lower, you know? And so I would come up, because I'm bad at it, I would come up with explanations about how I tripped and fell and stabbed myself in the foot. And like, it was just a little ridiculous. I like the idea of like, I fucked up. Man, I fucked up again. And that builds up until it breaks you to some degree. The bird is basically like a construct that each crew gets. You can sort of see it here. I guess it's literal bird, but and basically what it does is it has, you know, it's like a summons with powers. So it sort of can fill in. Sorry, my voice is already starting to go. It can sort of fill in certain things. Again, the class is esoteric, enforcer, artist. So like I mentioned, the blight. One of the things the bird can do is like either detect blight or cure blight or like get rid of it. So it sort of takes care of certain things to help you out. And it's done in a way that sort of makes sense with the lore, but I won't get into it because it's part of like the GM details, and I don't want to spoil too much. I believe that's where you sort of get it fleshed out. So you can sort of see the classes. Again, the artwork, great. Pushing a roll becomes, again, much more back to basics, but hope, you can trade hope, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, otherwise, it's, again, very, very similar. This goes back to cards for initiative. There's no action points. You're back to... Actually, it's not even fast and slow actions. It's just you can move and do an action. So it's even more streamlined. They go to zones. You know, it's all, again, very Mutineer Zero in vibe. Going back to more streamlined. You know, they let you do full auto and stuff like that, but it's not what it is in the Third Horizon. So again, like we can get into all this. Spaceship vehicle combat. This is almost non-existent. Basically, when you choose your spaceship, you basically choose the kind of ship it is, and you choose the color. Because, again, this is not a game about being in space, and we'll get into that. So they include some rules here, but it's more for, like, in your shuttle, like, more on a surface or in orbit of a surface. It's not really about being out in space on your own. They give you chases because, again, like, in space, the distances are massive, but here we're going to, again, be in closer proximity. So to give you some space rules, space chase rules. So anyway, they talk about the bird in play, so you can sort of, you know, build it out like a character. You can choose one that's high in health but low in energy, so it's more tankish, you know, and it can, like, Raptor's Call, Energy Bridge, Phoenix Engine. So it's sort of like magic spells that you can cast, you know, typical stuff for, you know, ground vehicles, kites, heirlooms. Anyway, then they get into the setting. I'm not gonna... River of Stars, right? You know, again, it's guilds and factions to help, you know, flesh things out. Ship City is, again, sort of like the Coriolis. They go into detail about that. So what I found... space travel and expeditions. Okay, so let's get into here. Space voyages. When you enter the slipstream, it takes you like weeks to get to where you're going. Now, the trick with the slipstream is that the only ships that can go into the slipstream and inspire it they're called great ships. Now, great ships, I don't know where it's... I feel bad because I know I read this somewhere and I don't know if it was here or somewhere else, but so great ships are these massive ships that have the strength to withstand the physical reality of being in a slipstream. Regular ships would just get wrecked. So what that means is that in order to travel a slipstream, you have to get onto the Starship Enterprise and just hang out there until you get to where you're going, get off that bus, and then you do the thing. One of the things, I don't care so much for this book. It's very vague in a lot of ways, and it's almost just and this is what I was going to get at. The reason why great ships are able to withstand, man, I feel bad because the reason why great ships are able to withstand sort of the pressures of being in the slipstream is because I thought they said it was because they innovated in crossbeams. You're like, okay, all right, it feels like the most throwaway detail of crossbeams, the ones that I'm looking at right now as part of my attic, or the ones that are on bridges, you innovated in crossbeams. And I wish I could find out, because it felt like the detail was just eh. And that well, I just sort of need a detail, is what I feel like the details of this game are, much more than I ever did with the Third Horizon. It's just this is a vague term that it's the builders, which I know isn't it, but there's other ones like that I won't get into. The blight. It doesn't really tell you much about it, but it's just these sort of vague terms. So anyway, Voyages Across the Dark. So this is where I think the game really starts to fall apart for me. Or at least if it's not falling apart, it's making me hey, idiot, this game is focused on something that you're trying it to not make it be focused on. So you have the Voyages Across the Great Dark. They take weeks, a week, a couple of weeks, whatever. When you're not doing your bit, you're assigned to a crew duty. There's not much here to flesh out what happens on the trip. They have this table here, but I could see going through this table pretty quickly, and then it's just oh, another brawl. Oh, is there more hull stress? There's not a ton to it. So I feel you'd sort of, if you played this a lot, you would sort of burn through the options pretty quickly, and there's not much else to make this part of the game interesting. Now, again, it's not really in the other one either, but the travel is only a day. So I think you're meant to blow through that. You're not meant to spend part of this, hey, we're in transit in the slipstream. So it's not helping you out much. I wish there was a lot more here. You get your shuttles. This is what your ship actually is. Now, they give you some stats to it, so if you need to do combat or chase, but the main things you pick are which one and the color. And then, again, so this takes you to the second part of the game, which is you arrive at your destination from the great ship, traveling through the the slipstream, hop in your shuttle, and you go to the point you're trying to explore. You can upgrade shuttles. Again, it's not nearly as robust, and it's not really, I don't know. It didn't strike me as what the game is supposed to be about. So then you get to where you land. So if you make landfall and you do really well, you get pretty close to your target. But if you don't, your hex is away. And then you kind of have to do a hex crawl. And again, when you're trying to explore the vast universe and all the worlds are supposed to be different and, all these different things, it's supposed to be a much bigger setting. I feel like there's not much help to get you through this section. Forbidden Lands has a pretty robust hex crawl system. I believe Mutant Year Zero does as well. I've never run it, but I played in it, and as a player, it felt that way. Yeah, and I'm not getting that from here. So again, this is supposed to be a part of the process. You land and you do the hex maps like you see in Traveler, but there's basically nothing to help you out, in my opinion. They give you some missteps, and so they're sort of relying for you to come up with everything on your own. Again, no tables to help you generate a random planet or... well, you know what? Let me take that back. Because there are tables to help you create the delve. Now, the delve is, I think, what this game is really supposed to be about, which is now that you've traveled through the slipstream, gotten down to the surface, made your way through the hex crawl, you arrive at whatever the ruins are that you're meant to explore, which is what your roles are as characters. And it's basically like a little dungeon dive, right? Like you go in there, there's some obstacles, and you discover a piece of ancient history or something like that. You can bring it back for money, rinse and repeat. You know, that's kind of the basic idea. So they give you like some tables to help you figure stuff out. But again, it's not a ton. It's not a ton. And so this is the procedure, but yeah, the tables. And so again, it's about like tracking supplies. So this gets a little bit like old school essentials, like, you know, again, going through the dungeons, you know, do you have enough torches, stuff like that. You know, some incidents that can happen if you go out of supply. So this is really what I think the game, you know, camps a delve example. So you can see this is, in my mind, what the game is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like these sort of quicker, you know, I don't know if one shot is possible, but it seems like it's meant to be less involved. It's meant to be more modular, more like episodic. I'll skip the thing, all these. Skipping the bestiary just to say so, and then you get to running the game. So at some point here, you're gonna get into the delve, right? So they give you some tables, but again, if this is the main game, so for example, like let's hear depth, entrance, and key locations. How many key locations are there, say, in a deep, tall delve? 2d6 plus 10. So there could be 22 of them, right? On average, there'd be about 17. So key locations: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 of them. So like if you're in a delve and there's 17 key locations and 8 of them are octagons, and then you define them with like 12 of these, and at some point it's just like, is there enough, oops, I shouldn't show you that secret of the builders, I'm not trying to spoil anything. Is there enough there to sustain a significant playtime? I don't honestly know. And maybe it's relying on the GM to come up with a lot of stuff on their own. I don't know. But it feels, at least for me, when I'm like, okay, shit, I'm just getting into this for the first time, it feels a little anemic in terms of the sort of support I would like to have as a GM to get up and running. The starting adventure in this is a delve, which makes me think, yeah, no, this is really what it's about, to show you how that works. It doesn't explain, there's nothing in it covering like the slipstream. There's a little bit covering once you get on the ground, but yeah, it's a very focused starting adventure. And I sit there thinking, you know, maybe, man, what if I bought a campaign that was pre-printed? But in my mind, that might be like, this is a little overstated, like throwing good money after bad. It's overstating it. I'd be curious, but I'm already thinking this is not what I'm looking for a sci-fi game. But I would want to know, like, what do they do? Like, the creators of the game, what do they do when they're describing the slipstream? What do they do to make it interesting? So then I could, again, use that to sort of use it as an anchor to figure out, oh, okay, I see what, yeah. And it's, you know, I could pull random tables from other games. Mothership, Alien, they all have good, like, encounter generators for when you're traveling around. I believe Mothership does. It doesn't matter, but that, you know, that's not the point though, right? Like, I could do that for any game. So given all of that, given how I was just like, I feel like they're not giving me a lot to, you know, support myself with. When we got to the GM running the game, I was just like, okay. Like I said, things can be very vague. Like traveling, so like space is as a wild sea, you know, it's like traveling is cruel. To convey this, show the fears in other crews, tell tales of lost ships. Let the explorers meet veterans with scarred souls. Let them dream about the never-ending void. Like, it's like, this doesn't tell me shit, man. Like, yeah, like this is like the most surface level. Hey, why don't you create a sense of wonder? Have you thought about that? Because space is big. Paint the wonder of the great dark in the big picture, but also in the details. Like, again, like, no shit. Like, describe the way stardust swirls around the ship as it slips in orbit. Again, some of these are, or how an alien sunrise paints the landscape in colors never seen by human eyes. These are not things that are unique to Coriolis. And as someone who is like, okay, I don't know if I'm ready to jump in. I don't have the confidence. When I didn't get it from the book, in this case, and then I was given this, I was like, yeah, I know, I feel stupid, but yeah, but this feels too broad. And with Coriolis, I mean, again, like these are the types of GM suggestions you always get, but I feel like the rest of the book helps you, support you in getting there, where this one didn't for me. Or like, the map of the Lost Horizon can be placed on the table and used as a backdrop to simply remind the players about the vastness of the horizon. Use the map of charted space to track the progress of great ship voyages, and place the ship city map on the table when the explorers visit the asteroid metropolis. You're just like, okay, yeah, I mean, again, like, mysteries are everywhere. Behind every answer lies a greater mystery. Revealing an answer is just as important as setting up the mysteries. Leaving mysteries unsolved for too long can frustrate the players and may make their efforts seem futile. On the flip side, resolving one mystery can open the door to deeper, more intriguing mysteries to pursue. Again, so then they say like the fate of the Ark ship Nader is a good example. So at least here they give you an example, but like that's like, yes, that is mysteries. Like that's how they work. Use puzzles. When designing puzzles, balance is key. They're too easy, they risk feeling trivial. Too hard, and they may frustrate players. Provide multiple ways to approach a puzzle: brute force, insight, specialized knowledge, so that every character... So basically, like, don't make your puzzles suck. Now, it doesn't tell you how to create a puzzle. The best puzzles are ones that feel integrated into the world. Like, yeah, again, like, yeah, no shit. The cost of loyalty. Make sure every interaction with a faction or an important NPC carries weight and consequences. Otherwise, like, again, it's just like basic storytelling. Like, why are you doing it? A favor granted should be like a leash around the explorer's neck, ready to be pulled when they least expect it. The struggle for influence and power is ever present. So it's like when you do something for one side, the other side doesn't like you. It's not really... It feels very surface level in a way that, like, it's like, yeah, no, this part I already know. What I don't know is maybe the details of faction interaction. Like, again, like how Hostel gives you little adventure hooks for each corporation. Like, if you gave me something like that, just a little like, hey, by the way, a little secret about these people is X. And maybe, maybe I'm just missing it somehow. So that was when I was left at the end of the day. I should say this game also introduces solo rules. Now, the rules are very much in that Sean Tompkin, I think he actually helps with this book. I think that the solo rules could actually help you flesh out your delves a little bit when you're not doing solo rules. But, yeah. And if you want to just see, like, the character sheets and stuff. So you have, like, health, but you also have hope and heart. And so, like, some extra stats that aren't often in... you track supply points. I like the descending dice in, like, Forbidden Lands, but it's whatever. It doesn't really matter. So, yeah, I mean, so at the end of the day... Let me get the other book back up here. And so they say, like, this is standalone. They say, I think they have conversion tables to help go between the two. And so, honestly, in some ways, I could see using this as sort of the planetary portion for this. I could see them working in conjunction like that a little bit. Oh, there's one interesting thing about Coriolis. I don't know if I'm going to find it, but I'm not going to search for it, but I was reading through the book, and jotting some thoughts down. And one of the things I noticed is they were talking about maps. And I don't know if it was like maybe a space map, a space combat map. And it said that if you wanted to get like a space combat map to use, go grab it from the Modifius website. And I'm curious if that sort of hints at where like Coriolis might have been heading behind the scenes before it was released by Free League. I was just a curiosity thing that jumped out at me. All the others say go to the Free League website. Or maybe that was deliberate. Modifius has it for some reason. I don't know, but I was just kind of curious. But yeah. So at the end of the day, like, I had forgotten how much I enjoyed Coriolis: The Third Horizon, and so I am appreciative of the Great Dark for getting me to like, hey, why don't you go back and look at this book and see what's there, because it's slipped from your mind. It turns out I genuinely liked what was there. What I've also learned is that Coriolis: The Great Dark, it feels honestly like Coriolis Dragonbane, like its focus being sort of like the dungeon dive, and I could see that maybe being useful as part of this, but as a standalone game, I definitely would not choose it over The Third Horizon. So I thought it was kind of an interesting direction to go. Again, like, they get rid of certain things like icons, the religious aspects, praying for pushing rolls. And here, you know, you have like a bird, you have more typical Mutant Year Zero mechanics. And sort of, in my mind, anemic sections on, you know, stuff to do in the game. And maybe you could argue, I don't want to argue that this hasn't, because it gives you 2 starting adventures that are decent. Like, I liked them, and I thought they did a good job being starting adventures, and then they give you a fleshed out, like, classic location, the bar on a space station. This, I felt like, again, they give you, you know, factions. They talk about how, you know, briefly they don't like each other and stuff like that. But it felt very, you know, very on the surface. I don't want to say superficial in a bad way, like, but it never felt like it went too deep in ways that I would hope they'd go a little bit deeper to get the juices flowing in my mind. And then what I think is the gameplay loop, which is slipstream to the planet, to the dungeon. I don't think there's enough material to flesh that out to make it feel unique, potentially over a long run. So, and again, like, that may be the point. Like, maybe this was designed, like I said, I thought some of this was designed as a reaction to this. Again, more straightforward Mutant Year Zero mechanics, getting rid of all the stuff about religion, and seemingly making it a bit more like a quick hit, you know, like it's about the delve and bust out a map, good to go. So it probably does what it sets out to do. It's just that when I'm looking for science fiction games, I want this. And when I want diving into dungeons, for some reason in my head, and this is my own problem, I prefer fantasy. But I'd be curious to see, again, like, what a published campaign of this would look like. And I think it mentions maybe one coming or something in the, I might be hallucinating that. And when it comes out, I'll probably grab the PDF, because I'm really curious to see, like, okay, like, I am missing, I'm not capable of seeing it. I'm missing the potential here. So let me see what you do as the publishers, the designers, and like, oh, okay, I got it. Because the dungeon delve that's provided as a starting adventure is just that. It's just like, I mean, it could be anything, right? Like, again, it felt like Coriolis Dragonbane. You know, I just go to the solo section of Dragonbane. It's like, okay, you find a temple, you've got this. You're like, oh, it's not that different than this, Coriolis the Great Dark. So it didn't, in my mind, separate itself. I felt like the random tables of what fills in there didn't quite have enough of a unique personality to keep it, you know, like, oh, interesting. Like, I'm surprised as the GM, and what does that mean? It makes me want to learn about it. It made it feel like it's just an item you collect to sell, which is part of it. Like, one of the things this game cites as a source of inspiration is Frederick Pohl's Gateway. And Gateway is very much a story about explorers who hop into a weird ship, go to some place they don't know what's there, and just grab the thing they find, bring it back to sell. Now, why they do it is very interesting in the novel. But, you know, that same reason is not here in The Great Dark. And so I just wish the Great Dark fleshed things out a little bit more, because as a simpleton, I kind of need that to get things started, to get things creatively like, okay, oh, and that inspires this, and now, oh, that sub-story can spin off into this, and then suddenly I'm creating my own adventures. The Great Dark didn't inspire that in me. Third Horizon definitely did. And so for me, that clearly gives, I would start with the Third Horizon, and I'm glad I have the Great Dark. And again, maybe I would sort of pick and choose things to help support this, but yeah, in the end, I'm definitely more of a fan of the original. I prefer like the crunchier take on the mechanics. It didn't feel too overbearing, and yeah. But otherwise, both books are produced exceptionally well. The artwork is stunning, and so in that sense, it's a nice read either way. So anyway, that's it for our look at Coriolis. Ran a little longer than I thought, but hopefully there's something here of interest. Again, Black Lodge Trivia Night. If you're watching this, you found our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe if this is your thing. There's audio versions of a lot of this. If you prefer podcasts, just search for Black Lodge Trivia Night wherever you get your audio. We should show up there. Leave reviews, whatever. That's always appreciated. There's a link to our Discord if you want to jump in and talk about stuff like this. We talk about CRPGs, RPGs. Jump in if you want. Otherwise, we always appreciate everybody who takes a look at this stuff. Hopefully we're going to get to some more Hostile solo soon. I'm hoping that's what's... we'll have to see. I definitely hope to get to it. I just don't know what's going to be next, literally, after this. Hopefully we get the gang back together as summer, we start to head deeper into summer, and maybe our schedule start to normalize a little bit. But otherwise, again, we always appreciate it. Thank you, and take care. Bye-bye. The in-session music was provided by Tabletop RPG Music and composed by Ian Fisher. You can find the Patreon at www.patreon.com/tabletop RPG music. That's all one word.